Welcome to the God's Good Table podcast, where you can learn all about nutrition, healthy eating and lifestyles, non-toxic healing modalities, and what the Bible has to say about all of this. So if you're interested in any of these topics, stay tuned. But I also want to tell you about an exciting event we have coming up August 12th through 14th. God's Good Table will be at Polyface Farm near Stanton, Virginia for an exciting, encouraging, information and action-packed few days, including a bonus Sunday morning worship and fellowship time featuring Preacher Joel. You'll hear from speakers including Sally Fallon Morell, Chef Jamie Berry, Mike the Fit Farmer Dixon, Pork Rind the Pork Evangelist, Joel Salatin, of course, and myself, Maureen Diaz. Our topics include the nutritional importance of animal foods, what the Bible has to say about this, how to select and prepare these foods, and tips to get your family to eat nose to tail. The Polyface crew will be feeding us breakfast and lunch both Friday and Saturday, while we also have a special VIP dinner planned for Saturday evening. The God's Good Table crew will provide a nourishing breakfast on Sunday morning before our worship service as well. Early bird pricing ends July 13th, so go to godsgoodtable.com now to register. See you there. Hey everybody, I am here this time in West Central Tennessee.
I think it's just central. I think we're Middle Tennessee.
Yeah.
Middle Tennessee.
But at one of my favorite places here. I love Tennessee. I've been here for the Homesteaders of America event this past weekend, and I'm staying at the Tiny House, Tennessee.
Tiny Homestead, Tennessee.
Tiny Homestead, Tennessee. Thank you.
It used to be a tiny house until I got a farm, and now it's Tiny Homestead.
Yeah. So Shannon owns it, and if you're ever wanting a fun, quiet, peaceful getaway, check it out on Airbnb.
We're pet friendly. Bring your pets.
We even had the goats over yesterday and the donkey walking around who woke me up during the night baying. No, it's okay. It was funny. I laughed.
Blackjack.
Yeah. Oh, Blackjack. So anyway, Shannon has to get over to her chickens, ducks, and goats.
Yes.
And bring me one little taste more of goat milk before
yes,
we leave today.
Absolutely. I'll go milk the goat for you.
Okay.
Fresh from the udder. Or teat. I'm not sure. But anyway.
Well, it's both, actually.
Well, thank you. See, she's an educational source for me because I'm a new homesteader. So yeah, I love having
a fabulous job.
Okay, I'm off to milk a goat. Bye, everybody. Come on, Reese. Let's go.
See you, Shannon.
Yeah. And Reese the lab, beautiful, friendly, happy guy, but he might knock over my microphone. So, and I'm here with two other homesteaders that I met over the weekend who I'm really impressed with. They are Luke Kidwell and Tommy Wheatley, and they are lifelong friends living in Southern Virginia, not so far from me. And I am impressed. They have started a new venture called Raw Milk Deadlift. I have it right? Yeah.
Raw milk and deadlifts.
Raw milk and deadlifts. So you'll have to check them out on Instagram and wherever else. I want you to give all of those credentials at the end of our talk here. But they have a passion for health and wellness, and this led them to farming, homesteading, and living more connected to nature, which of course I love, which is why I'm outside today, because it's a beautiful Tennessee morning with the birds singing and all of that. And you're enjoying that every day, right? Yeah. So they love traditional values and this whole way of life. But most important is that they feel that this way of living does bring them a closer connection to God and helps them even more to cherish his gifts and blessings, which I think is phenomenal. And it's something that I really miss about homesteading myself. So Tommy and Luke aim to share their faith and spread God's word through farming, fitness outside of the gym, and living close to nature just as God intended. So welcome, guys. It's nice to see you this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. Absolutely. Awesome to be here.
Yeah, well, it's awesome to have you. Homesteaders of America is one of my most favorite events, really for two reasons. One is that you meet the nicest people, and I really mean the nicest people. People tend to
pretty much across the board be conservative and Christian, and obviously interested in homesteading. So I really love to be in that crowd of people. Even though I'm not currently homesteading, I am working my way back into it right now, having left the farmstead 7 years ago. But you guys are just getting ramped up in this. So tell me about your journey and what brought you here.
For sure. Yeah. So like you said, we've been best friends since kindergarten, and didn't grow up farming or anything at all, even though we did grow up in West Virginia. So most people have maybe preconceived notions that everyone in West Virginia is a farmer. It gives us the street cred at the homesteading conferences. Yeah, everybody.
Yeah, there you go. You're one of those from West Virginia.
Exactly. We're like an hour and a half outside of DC where we grew up. So it's kind of it's not what people expect, but we didn't grow up with any of that. What we did get into around high school was health and wellness. And it kind of started around when I was 16. I started getting really bad depression and anxiety and didn't really know what to do. And I sought out a holistic practitioner who's also a friend of mine. And he explained that it was probably candida overgrowth, which I'm sure you're very, very familiar with.
Yeah.
And he gave me some different ways to eat. And within changing my diet, within like a week, most of my symptoms went away. So, of course, you have to tell your best friend all about it. And that's kind of when we got into organic foods, really working out. And it was just over the years, when you go down that rabbit hole, what we learned was buying organic foods at the store is awesome. And I think it's a great starting point for people. But
Yeah.
the end goal is always going to be the cleanest thing you could probably get is to grow your own food, or at least know darn well who does grow your food. So that's kind of what got us into it. And when we graduated high school, I actually came here where we are now to this farm. And then a couple years after high school, you went up to Maine. So we kind of found farming at the same time. I went up to Maine to work on a farm just for the sole purpose of I was bored with school and organic farming sounded cool. I had really no idea the practical, implications of organic farming. It just sounded like a fun job to be outside all day. I was like, yeah, let me give it a try. And it was a summer internship, and I was only supposed to be there for 3 months, but I ended up staying for 3 years, just totally fell in love with farming. And then, him being down here, then I just came back down recently, and now we're both, doing the whole farming thing together, which is awesome. Yep. A dream come true.
That's really cool. Do you guys have families?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, our family, I guess both of our families are still in West Virginia. And I know we would love to maybe try to convince them to join the homestead scene, because we actually have a lot of friends. We met a couple people down at the HOA event where we met you, and we have some friends around here who came from urban areas and just kind of decided, a lot of them in 2020, hey, living in a city isn't the way to do it anymore. And they like moved and bought a homestead with their whole families. So in a way, I think we can be a little jealous of that, because the only thing that I guess could make it better than farming with your best friend is if like you just had a big, almost compound, with like your family.
Yeah, we've thought about that. Yeah.
I've got my family doing a herd ship for raw milk, and they started their own garden. So we're working. They're not ready to buy, 50 acres in a mule or anything, but we're getting going. And my dad, he would love, I think, to eventually kind of retire and do the homestead thing. But what I had to get on him about was because he didn't grow up farming. He was a firefighter and a general contractor. But he keeps saying how, I'd love to have a little farmette. And I was like, Dad, they call it homestead. You can't go, they just call it a farmette. They're going to run you out of it. But no, yeah, we and it's great that we're not too far from our families, so they definitely can come and visit, which is always a blast.
Yeah. But no wives and kids yet. But when it comes, you'll stay put where you are.
Absolutely. And that's, of course, the goal is to find a farm where you want to raise your kids, settle down. And I know we're both, because right now we're managing a farm. So we don't own this farm. It's a big farm. It's about 300 acres. But this has given us a tremendous kind of opportunity to like know what we're looking for when we get our own place for our families. Like you said, when we have our kids and we want to, I'm sure we obviously both want to raise our families on farms. Now it's like we really know what we want. and what we don't want.
Yeah.
And we don't want to raise them in suburbia. That's a fact.
That's a really good way to start out to learn. And when my husband and I bought our property in Pennsylvania, well, we started in the middle of 400 acres on a rented property, which was a great start. But then we bought our farm, which was in horrible shape, and rehabbed it. And anyway, it's a wonderful way to bring up kids, a wonderful way. Yeah. So that'll be neat. Now you guys are into fitness as well,
Mm.
and that doesn't come from a gym for you.
Well, it started out in the gym. It's the almost the health and wellness was almost started by fitness. We just started lifting weights like every 16-year-old boy starts doing,
Yeah.
and the goal to try to be the most fit kind of turned into try to be the healthiest version of yourself, and
Yeah.
that's really where the rabbit hole started.
Mm-hmm. And now, we still work out, like we'll set aside time for workouts and stuff, but we're an hour and a half from anything. So it's all, the closest thing we get to the gym is working out in the fresh air with some barbells and some weights. But of course, a lot of it is carrying feed bags, walking
Yeah.
buckets of milk or water. And that definitely, I think one of the fun things for us is because, since high school, we started lifting weights, so we're always into that. Now we actually have an outlet to test, okay, how strong are you really? Because it's easy to stay in the gym, but how many feed bags can you carry? How long can you do it? How heavy
Yeah.
pick up? It's,
And then with the two of us, it quickly turns into a competition for sure.
How many feed bags can you carry at once?
I don't know that we've ever maxed out on the feed bags carrying, but we're definitely going to try after this podcast now, and we'll have to do
Let us know how that goes. I want to know.
for sure. Definitely.
Yeah. I used to haul the 80-pound bags of feed. I'd pick them up from our friend who grew and formulated all of the organic and soy-free feed mixtures, but 80-pound bags. And I could lift those babies from the barn to the car or the van and then back into our barn. But man, I probably couldn't do much more than that. But mucking stalls is a great way to stay in physical shape.
Yes.
And I have a picture, I'll have to try to find it and add to this, of Erin and her dad, probably 20 years ago, unloading a load of hay bales into our little, at the time, I think it was just a shed. Yeah. So she's done that too.
Yeah. And hay, especially like hauling square bales, that's a
Yeah.
tremendous workout. And it's
Yeah.
it's funny because it's, if anyone who's ever done it, especially if you're like getting up hay, that's like a marathon workout. It's not like you just pick up a
Yep.
couple heavy things. It's all day, and it's hot because the nature of getting up hay, it has to, usually be pretty hot weather. So it's dry. So it's like,
Yeah.
you can't get away from out there in the sun, and
Yeah.
awesome. And we really think that every young person should experience baling square bales of hay at some point in their life, because it's just a character builder,
Yeah, it is. It builds endurance, stamina, perseverance.
Yep.
Because, yeah, I know it's really, really hard work and hot and dusty and filthy. Trying to remember from one of my favorite books. It'll come to me later. Russia, when they were using sickles to harvest the hay, and then it had to dry in the field. By hand, they'd put it in furrows, and then they'd go back and they'd collect it and pitch it onto the wagon.
Mhm.
And then haul that into the barn and pitch that into the hay mow. And Little Britches series also, Father and I were ranchers and man of the family. It talks about that and what tremendously hard work it was. But those people were fed. It was a women's job to
Yep.
prepare massive feasts, and they'd bring them out at lunchtime along with their haymakers water, made with oats and spring water and honey. Because
I'll add to the hay experience that every young person should experience that baling hay and then jumping in the creek afterwards.
Right.
That-
yeah,
The well-deserved creek dip is it's magical.
Very well deserved after all of that.
Mm,
Yeah.
sure.
So, talk a little bit about your feelings on what kinds of foods are good for our bodies, what you've discovered. Let's talk about raw milk and what you've learned about that. And Luke, I'm curious about the herd share that your family has bought into because I'm in that area and probably one that I know, but I think you may have told me. Yeah.
Yeah, so if we get the herd share, it's actually in Virginia, but West Virginia has the same laws. The farm is in
Yeah.
Virginia, small little farm outside of Berryville, Virginia. I don't know if you ever heard of it up there.
Yeah, that's right. You told me that. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful little spot.
And then yeah, as far as
Yep.
what foods are healthy, I think the foods that have been around since the beginning of time that God created, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I mean that's just the foundation for a perfect diet. So like raw milk, and of course, the Bible mentions milk many times, doesn't call it raw milk
Mhm.
because that
Because it was just always wrong.
exactly, they didn't have to deal with that. But milk is mentioned often, meat is
Yeah.
mentioned often, honey
Yeah.
is mentioned often, and one of the fascinating things about that is these whole foods that God made, that God put on earth, these are the most vilified foods in today's
Mhm.
day and age, right? Like the three foods I just listed, there's a lot more examples, but say just those three because those are also very biblical foods. They're extremely vilified. Now they're
Yeah.
pushing fake meat, fake milk, and stay away from honey because that has sugar in it. Sugar is going to make you fat. Oh, but have this artificial sweetener in the meantime.
Yeah.
Um,
With
And
neurotoxins. Yeah.
exactly. And a verse even that I wrote down because I remember when we met, you had talked about we had touched on how there's different Bible verses and things like that that relate to this. So
Yeah.
1 Timothy chapter 4, verses 1 through 4, where it pretty much it talks about how, hey, in these later times, there's going to be a lot of people who go astray from God. And it says that they're going to be led by deceitful spirits and demons, and they're going to teach things that are that are coming from demons. And one of
Yeah.
the very clear points it makes a lot of fascinating ones, but it's that they're going to prohibit and tell you not to get married, which obviously we know traditional marriages, traditional families, that's under attack, right?
Yeah.
God
Oh,
forbid
yeah.
a man and woman get married anymore. That's like offensive somehow. And
Yeah.
then it says that they're gonna warn you, they're gonna try to convince you to not eat certain foods that God has designed to be eaten with thanksgiving. And it goes
Right.
on to say how, God made all these things for those who believe and to be received with thanks. And I think that's why we tell people, hey, be super wary of any expert or trend or diet that is vilifying these whole foods that have been around since the beginning of time. And I think it's like, it seems like an innocent thing, like, oh, I'm vegan. And we don't have anything against vegans, but it seems like an innocent thing, but you are quite literally playing into the hands of what it's warning us against, right?
Yeah.
Falling into these false narratives they're deceitful. So I think that's kind of the main thing, if you have anything to add.
Diet, food, everything like that. Man is the one that made it really, really complicated. God made it quite
Yeah.
simple. Like whole
Yeah.
foods. If you can just, and it was pretty recently, man made it pretty complicated because
Yeah.
if you asked your let's say great grandfather what their diet was, he'd
Yeah.
look at you like you're crazy and say, I don't know, whatever grows this time of year is what I'm eating.
Right.
But now, especially people who have been eating, say, the standard American diet for a long time, like family members, my parents, trying to talk to them. And it seems like you're weaving through all of these traffic cones, loops, trying to, what's this mean? What's that mean? And man is the one that made all
Yeah.
those labels and
Right.
new food groups, just creating, new food groups like the baked meat stuff, trying to navigate all that. And it's painful where it should be so simple. But it is simple once you realize, oh, I'm just supposed to be eating foods that God created.
Mm-hmm.
Right. By the way, Anna Karenina was the novel that I was referring to, and I it's a fantastic novel anyway, and a fantastic look at human nature and societal structures and all of that. But that is one of many books, along with the Little Britches series, and Not so much Little House on the Prairie because they were eating and preferring white flour and sugar. But the
Wow.
traditional foods, yeah, I mean, I caught that early on, but Little Britches was different. But people have really convoluted it. And then you read some of those old novels and you read the Bible and you see all of these references to these health-giving, natural, whole foods that, as you've said, Tommy, are vilified now. And they shouldn't be, and we're trying to correct that. But of course, you're familiar with the work of Dr. Price, and
Works.
he went around and he studied these cultures. Most cultures milked some kind of animal, not all, but most. And they made butter, they made yogurt, kefir, and they drank it raw.
Yep.
And it was good. It
Mhm.
was good. And God calls it good.
Yeah. And that's
Reverend
great.
Sarai fed their heavenly visitors curds and whey, veal, and sourdough bread, you know?
Yeah. And that's a great point, that the most nourishing foods on the planet are oftentimes the most delicious. And that goes
Yeah.
so against what we're taught. And it blows our minds sometimes because, we're in this maybe little niche, right? With very like-minded people like you and people who follow Weston A. Price's work. We forget that still the mainstream narrative to a lot of people is that healthy foods taste like cardboard. Healthy food
Yeah.
is gross. Healthy
Oh,
food
yeah.
always makes you hungry. It's like, no, bacon can be a superfood if it comes from the right place. So that's just such a mind, because it's no wonder why people ha- have this skewed perception of, I don't want to eat healthy. That's a drag. Look, iceberg lettuce and algae is what most people think of as healthy, right?
Yeah, and granola. I look like at Costco. I buy some things at Costco because I feed a lot of people. I
Yeah.
buy a lot of stuff locally. And of course, we used to produce most of our food, but I'm not in that situation now. But I go to Costco. My kids do want granola, and I make it sometimes. I look at the granola, the healthy organic granola that they have on the shelves. And the second ingredient is soybean oil
No. Mm-hmm.
and then sugar. So what if it's organic?
Right. Right.
Yeah, you really got to read. So I don't buy it
Mm-hmm.
because soybean oil should never be consumed by human beings. We should be eating butter and ghee and lard and right, all of those things. Yeah, but they've all been vilified. But I love your point about good food, natural food, whole food being delicious.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what's so also great about Weston A. Price's work, is because if you read a lot of their stuff, it's not most diets. I feel like if you know what to look for, you can see how it's pretty much a marketing ploy. It has big bold letters. Don't eat this. This is bad for you. Most of what Weston A. Price is teaching you is what to eat. It's super simple. It's super perfect. And then it's just in a kind of matter of fact elegance, like, hey, these are what started to happen in cultures that started to introduce lots of white flour, sugar, seed oils, right?
Yeah.
But it's not this loud, look at me, I have this new
Yeah.
you. It's like just so simple. And
Yeah.
so that's probably why, you know, it doesn't get the attention it truly deserves compared to like these Netflix documentaries about going plant-based, because those are
Uh,
just so captivating when you can just shout misinformation from the rooftops. It's all marketing.
and people will buy into it. Even though every part of our body is clearly designed to eat everything, an omnivorous diet.
Right.
People totally miss that. Why do we have canines? Why does our gut, it's a single chambered gut like a pig, right?
Yeah.
Made to digest both plant and animal proteins and break it into nutrients, but we can't digest fiber. We can't digest the plant fibers that animals can do.
Hmm.
And we're not capable of efficiently processing carotenes into vitamin A, but ruminant animals are. So,
Right.
yeah. What do you say to people when they say, talking about raw milk? Oh, milk is only for baby animals. It's not meant for humans. And I hear that all the time, and I have a standard answer, but I want to know what you guys think about that.
Well, we heard a great quote about kind of this topic one time, which is, how can you prove a zebra is made for a lion? Obviously, it's part of its diet, but where there's not a tag on a zebra that says, "Hey, this is for a lion to eat," or a gazelle. So we just nature is made for itself. food, God made it as this beautifully woven ecosystem to thrive on itself. There's no such thing as in nature. It's not like this is for cows, this is for birds, everything thrives on itself. And human history has proven, like you said, how so many traditional cultures have consumed dairy.
Yeah.
That's your proof. Because when people
Yeah.
live
Always
lives,
consumed it.
exactly.
And when you see, milk as a superfood, when you see all the vitamins, and nutrients, and enzymes that are in it, why would
Yeah.
God put that there so easily available for us, but we're supposed to ignore it? Just because I know that's the cow.
Right. And I
Yeah.
think the only reason that, because like a similar topic that you brought up is milk is only for cows. Oh, and humans are the only species that consume milk after infancy. Well, humans are the only species that do a lot of things. We're the only
Yeah,
species that,
exactly. We're the only
that
ones that build houses. We're the only ones that drive cars because God gave us the brain and the
right.
hands
Mhm.
and the physique to be able to do these things. It's not because it wasn't meant for us.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and
Milk a cow or a goat and the kitty cats and the puppy dogs are out there wanting theirs too.
Yeah.
if they could, they would,
If
right?
they could, they would.
Exactly. That's my point. Yeah.
We really blessed with the ability to do it, but
And it's not like we have to hold down our cow every morning and, lock her up and hold her in a headlock just to milk her. She stands by the barn door every single morning.
she's waiting.
wanting to come.
Mhm. And a lot of times we have to slap her to get her out because she doesn't want to leave. So it's like, and that's because that's another narrative. These people literally say, and we've gotten some comments and stuff from them before. Apparently, people literally think milking a cow, they call it like rape. And they're like, you're
Yeah.
raping this.
Oh gosh.
You've probably seen a couple Netflix documentaries of these massive farms, which of course we're not defending any of those at all.
Right.
You have never stepped foot on a small scale farm or small scale homestead. Yeah, the milking stall, like Luke just said, our cow's name is Gertrude that we're milking right now. It's her favorite place to be. Gertrude doesn't want to be anywhere else. If we're late for milking, she's screaming at us. She lets us know. So it's just that disconnection. It's so easy to come
Yeah.
up with lies and distorted perceptions when you're a million miles away from it, right? And you've never actually
Right.
interfaced with it. People are writing these comments probably from a high-rise apartment in the concrete jungle,
Yeah, yeah, having no real understanding of what a small, sustainable, regenerative farm is and how farmers such as yourselves actually enjoy and revere the animals. And I used to enjoy having conversations with my cow, whichever one it was at the time, nestling in the winter, nestling in so I'm nice and
Okay.
warm against her. And
Yep.
it was my time to think and pray, but we'd have conversations one way maybe, but she'd listen.
They're great listeners.
They're great listeners.
They're great listeners. I also have oftentimes thought that even in the earliest times of Adam and Eve, for instance, Abel was keeping sheep and goats. What were they for?
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe they weren't eating meat, but they probably were consuming milk. They were probably making cheese and butter.
And I don't think they were consuming, soybean oil.
That probably not. Yeah.
Definitely not that.
Okay.
Which our listeners need to understand that soy milk and soy in general is not a traditional food. The only traditional soy-based foods are very, very well fermented, like a year or 4 years. Soy in itself can be very upsetting to the gastrointestinal tract, which is why so many babies fed soy milk, especially preemies in hospitals, end up with a lot of gut damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember, take it with a slight grain of salt because I heard it a few times a number of years ago, but something along the lines of the average, I think a baby that's breastfed versus one that's fed on formula right
Mhm.
away, I want to say they have it's like thousands of times more estrogen in their body from a baby that's breastfed. I don't want to throw a specific number out there.
Yeah, and the soy milk in particular. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like consuming a pack of birth control pills every week for an
So
infant.
terrifying.
Yeah.
So terrifying. And about soy, we were talking this morning in the milking stall that if a 1700s farmer came back to life now, probably confused. Luke made the point that they have all this land. It's like, oh man, where do you farm? Corn
Yeah.
and soy. they probably wouldn't even, a lot of them probably wouldn't even know what soy is. And they'd be like,
Right.
wow, corn really made it.
We're like, yeah, well, you have
Yeah.
$3 million in tractors and you raise corn.
Yeah. The whole infrastructure, the big barns and yeah, you have to plant, maintain, spray, and then harvest all of that. And then you have to store it and then feed it every day to the animals instead of letting the animals go out and graze and harvest their own. And, you don't have to plant.
And then
Yeah.
there's some of the people we met at the Homesteaders Conference this weekend. Some people have, 1 to 5 acres, maybe. Like, oh,
Yeah.
wow, what do you we're like? Oh, pigs, chickens, turkeys, ducks. I've got a garden. And they have all these different things, you know, 25 more things than someone has on the 1,000-acre corn farm.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of those places are the 1 to 5 acre homesteads are thriving, healthy ecosystems.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. And that's really interesting. I've seen people with as little as a quarter of an acre in downtown LA produce not only enough food, honey, chicken, milk, eggs, vegetables, herbs for their own family, but enough on a quarter of an acre in the city that they have a thriving business selling to restaurants and the public. You
I
can
think
do a heck of a lot.
between the rooftop gardens in cities and all the abandoned lots, if they turn those into, chicken coops or whatever, I think
Yeah.
most cities could totally feed themselves
Yeah.
without having to ship in all the stuff from outside. Now they're not going to be able to eat, pizza and Coca-Cola,
Right.
but meat, milk, and eggs, I think, is a much better alternative.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
But they want to ship in stuff from, New York City wants to ship in stuff from California.
Yep.
They want to
Yeah.
ship soy and almonds from California to feed them.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we were talking about that just yesterday with a friend of ours who's about 20 minutes away, has a a farm, not a homestead. He has a production farm, but all sustainable. And we were talking about how even like these big scale organic farms, especially say like the big scale organic farms that grow a lot of grain for organic feed, some of them, I mean, it's definitely still not perfect. There are definitely a lot of the ones that maybe are just non-GMO. Of course, not all of them, but we're talking about how some of them will still spray glyphosate, periodically every few years.
Yeah.
But it's like it's sold and marketed as health food. And we got into the conversation of he asked, like, do you think there's really a way to do this big scale farming clean? And we're like, well, the answer is probably like we need to stop doing this huge scale farming. And
Yeah.
communities need to, because there's definitely ways to do smaller scale farms and more local based farms very clean.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the breakdown is. You probably are going to keep running into a dead end if you're trying to feed the whole world from a few farms, because it's also not a biblical concept either, right? The Bible's all about community
Right.
and, knowing your neighbor and loving your neighbor. And I mean, eating is a spiritual act, right? Going back to the verse we read
Yeah.
earlier, it's God made these foods to be received with thanksgiving. Well, that's a spiritual act, and to completely be cut off from the source, that's not to us. It doesn't seem like a biblical concept, and I think every Christian would agree. When you have that experience of getting your food, from local farmers or growing it, you can feel that it's a lot more than a physical thing going on, right? It
Yeah.
feeds back, like feeds your soul. So I
Yeah.
believe that's the answer is communities really need to get back to feeding themselves. And I mean, Lord knows there's enough room to do it. And especially with regenerative agriculture, a lot of land that is seen as unfarmable actually could be farmable. Like
Yeah.
there's the Sacred Cow documentary where essentially turned like a lot of that desert into pasture. Most people don't even
Yeah, with Alan Savory and the Savory Institute. They go around the world teaching people how to reclaim desertified land and we did that on our farm too. It wasn't desertified, but it had been monocropped and very heavily sprayed for decades. And of course, I wasn't thrilled about having the residue from the spray. But in 2 or 3 years, we regenerated that soil using principles I didn't know about Alan Savory, but I was learning reading books. And
yeah.
yeah, and in a few years, we had black, loose, wonderful, rich soil.
That's awesome.
And it didn't cost us anything. It wasn't like we were doing something that required any input. God put in place principles that if we just pay attention to them, Not only can our bodies be healthy, but that starts with healthy soil, healthy land, healthy animals. And so that's very doable.
That's probably the biggest disconnect that we see with a lot of the Christian community, a lot of churches is food. You know, we'll have, I went to a church service not too long ago and we're there, everyone's praying. It's a great time, honoring God. And then there's a cookout afterwards with hot dogs from Walmart. And uh,
Yeah.
they come back to the Bible verses earlier, a real big one that Salton talks about in that marvelous pigness of pigs.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
the Corinthians 10:31. That one really stood out to me in that book. Whereas, and everything you do, whether it's eating or drinking, whatever it is, do all to the glory of God. And
Yep.
man, I was at this cookout. I didn't eat any of the hot dogs that I was talking to some folks. Like, man, if they just trace back that hot dog to its origin, was that pig raised honoring God in any way whatsoever?
And it wasn't. It's
No,
bleak.
no.
It's awful on every level, including the humaneness or lack thereof of rearing that pig.
Yep.
But of course, what it's fed, how it's housed, how it lives its entire life, like even birthing in, I don't remember what they're called, but they're
Like
like,
farrowing stalls with the
yeah,
farrowing
farrowing stalls,
they
which are
the
just,
their whole 8 weeks that they're raising the piglets is they're facing one direction, can barely lay down.
yeah. Yep. And then they're being fed genetically modified, heavily sprayed soybeans and corn.
Yep.
Right.
And that all gets into us when we eat it.
Yeah.
No
The
wonder
way
we are so sick.
Yeah, right. And Sal points out perfectly, God created these animals to exist a certain way. And most conventional farmers, they're fighting an uphill battle. They're fighting against the very
Yeah.
nature of the animals they're producing.
Yep.
And that's why I love Joel so much, where he's like, look, this is the most Christian way you can raise these animals. It's just let them be those animals, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And for people who want us not to eat animals or use animals in any way, shape, or form for food, I ask, then what is to become of these animals when we just open the gates and let them go?
Yeah.
Sure.
That's inhumane.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And
and like the fact that there's no such thing as a death-free foods. In order for there to be life, there has to be death, including growing plants. Like you
Yeah.
said, if you get at these people who don't want to eat meat, tons of animals died for them to grow those crops, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be moles, weasels, rabbits, birds, insects, right? And of course, even the
Yeah.
insects, well, because they like to get into the topic of sentient beings and how can you say one life is worth more than another? Well, then that must apply to insects too. And there's not
Yeah.
like any plant production grown, on a farm, even like the organic ones, like people still will use different things to get rid of insects, and
Yeah.
so, but that's a perception that I think people only have when they're really removed from it. That yeah, that there's no such thing. Like I remember I heard a lady not long ago. She's a natural doctor, and she was talking about, yeah, I don't like to eat animals because eating a carcass, it's like death, and why would I ingest death? And it's like, well, you're ingesting. In order for you to ingest life, there has to have been death in the process. That's the circle
Yeah.
of life. That's how God created it. So then, and now it gets into the thing of even without all the health benefits of animal foods, you tell me what's more, ethical, right? To have it at an arm's length and pretend that you're not killing anything, or to actually honor the gift that God has given you, which is this animal, and to use it for the highest good and let it to nourish you instead of pretending
Yeah.
that there's no death going on is silly,
There's massive death, even to grow those crops of primarily soybean and corn.
Yep.
You're annihilating nature
Yep.
to plant vast acres of those things. You're demolishing riparian areas and woods and meadows in order to plant your crop. And then you're spraying it with a non-organic fertilizer and with chemicals to kill all of the plants that you don't want. So you're killing the pollinators, you're killing the birds, as you said, you're killing the bunnies and all of that, and you're making it impossible for those animals and insects to come back because they can't live there. You've just driven them out. You've killed them with poisons, and there's no place for them to go and regenerate.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, let's think on that.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. And of course, in nature, you watch the lions and the tigers and the bears, and they're carnivorous animals. Most bears are omnivores, but some are carnivores, and the means by which they capture and kill their prey is,
Yeah.
you want to talk about humane? How about terrified?
Right.
You know?
A lot of times they're still alive when they're eating it.
Yeah, being eaten. And I love
Right.
to watch nature shows, but that's hard for me to watch.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think if a lot of people track down their food from its origin, it'd be hard to watch that whole story.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah,
Right.
like a slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
If you are eating meat,
Right.
the slaughterhouses,
Yep.
they're worse than watching a lion capture a gazelle.
Yeah.
But
It's
you know what's funny?
horrific death.
If you raise your own animals, most of the time you do see that origin. You were there for it.
Right. And it's
Right.
it's not terrifying, it's
No.
beautiful. And there's even so around where we are, it's beef country primarily.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of cows. The sustainable agriculture movement isn't huge in our area. It's a lot of
Yet.
yet.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Good point.
It's a lot of conventional guys, not like huge like feedlots or anything like that, but cows are all vaccinated, almost definitely spray around their property, all this stuff. But what we just like kind of recently gotten a discussion of, so cows like this that even if they're shot up with vaccines and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
probably surrounded by glyphosate, still you would say they probably have like a decent quality of life just because they're out in the pastures all the time. But a lot of these cows, when they ship them off and sell them, they're not killing them and selling them direct to the consumer. These cows, a lot of them are getting sent to bigger feedlots, maybe in
Yes.
Texas or wherever. And that was something that kind of recently came to our attention. Was like, yeah, wow, because there's cows right across the street from us, like we can see from our front window that our neighbor owns. And he's a pretty big time beef farmer. And we just always assumed, he probably does this. Maybe he has them on pasture so he can sell them as grass fed. Then he probably
Mhm.
grain finishes them and sells them to the, whatever stores. But
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case. I think most cows from around here get sent to feedlots, which
And
makes
they
it
can actually be marketed as grass fed, and people think
Yep.
that that's a good thing.
is insane.
Which is evil.
Yeah.
That's nothing short.
Yeah. It's just a marketing ploy. Yeah.
For sure. It's also
Because all
sad,
cows are grass fed.
for sure.
They don't, but they're also fed soybeans and corn. And that nice marbling that people think is great for their steak is a product of genetically modified, heavily sprayed corn and soybean production throughout their life cycle, in addition to the grass that they have to have,
Right.
hay or actual grass. So grass fed, that's knowing labels. Grass fed doesn't actually mean anything any more than organic.
Right.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Exactly. And it's also like a sad thing too, because these cows are smart, they're intelligent, they're aware that they spent a lot of their life on pastures that they probably enjoyed, and they're aware that they're going through essentially a bovine holocaust, and it's no
Yeah.
like exaggeration. And that's sad too, because I think one of the things that a lot of smaller or sustainable farms kind of pride themselves on is that their animal has a good quality of life pretty much right up until the end, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it also just makes you feel better that, hey, like literally right up until this thing passed, it was happy, it had a good life.
Yeah.
Not the last month or couple months, whatever, in this, like they're shoulder to shoulder, standing in huge piles of their own feces. I mean,
Wow.
that's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah, that's horrible. I grew up in Wisconsin, and that was the case on a lot of farms.
And the most unfortunate part, I think, is a lot of these guys around here that are selling that raise their beef outside and then sell to the feedlots. A lot of them are just good Southern Christian people.
Yeah.
And they just are missing that bridge of, their faith in their food and
Mhm.
in their land.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think when it comes to food and health from a Christian perspective, I look at food as involving faith
Mhm.
and freedom. freedom to do things the right way and to make your choices and not to be bound into this system that is so expensive and so toxic and so unhealthy for everything involved in the process. So for me, health and food is all part of my faith as it
Yeah,
is yours.
absolutely.
Yeah. So what are some things that you guys are raising where you are?
So
Obviously a cow.
yeah, obviously we've got the cows. We also have a few steers that probably by next winter will be harvested for meat. We've got some pigs, some Kunes and Magalisa heritage breed
Uh,
pig. We've got chickens. We've got turkeys and rabbits. Now, like I said, we don't own the farm; we manage it. If it was up to
yeah.
us, I don't know if it would have rabbits and turkeys because some of the turkeys are pretty mean,
Yeah.
but fine. And then some goats that are pretty much just for characters on the farm to walk around.
They're pets now.
Yeah. Yeah. They're so much fun to watch.
They're hilarious.
And then, yeah, other than that, that's pretty much what we're raising. We have a couple gardens that, we usually plant in with some grow boxes. And then just a lot of noisy dogs that run around and keep all that stuff safe.
Yeah. What kind of dogs are they?
One, yep, one Great
Great
Pyrenees.
Pyrenees. Yeah.
One half Great Pyrenees, half Border Collie. One
Oh.
half Great Pyrenees, half trailer mutt. And two Swiss Mountain Dogs. And we had we just the one Pyrenees who's half Pyrenees, half mutt. She just had puppies, and the father was a purebred Great Pyrenees. So if you know anyone or if anyone out there is listening, we're looking for homes for these 75% Pyrenees dogs. So
Yeah.
we're gonna find this. But
I'm actually tempted, but I want one that doesn't shed.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably they would, because I'm thinking mom and dad both shed it. So I don't know if it's
Yeah, I know we had a couple of Great Pyrenees on the farm. I love them. They're the sweetest, most loyal dogs, but they shed.
they do.
Yeah.
They shed and bark. They bark a
Yeah.
lot, especially at night, which is just what they can do.
Yeah. Well, but they're doing their job.
Absolutely. Yep.
I think it's really cool too how God built into animals certain instincts, and even with hybridizing, so to speak, dogs and cats, but dogs in particular, you can come up with character traits that are instilled in them, and you can kind of concentrate that instinct like you do in a Great Pyrenees. They are excellent guardians.
Yeah.
Excellent guardians. And, I have stories I could tell, I won't now, but really cool things with ours, but the best of dogs.
Just so cool. And yeah, like how they instinctively know. We didn't train ours at all. And they instinctively know I want to go out at nighttime. They instinctively know the perimeters of where they are. We have a lot of coyotes by us.
Yeah.
We've never once had a coyote kill anything since we've had the dogs. I mean, we hear them. Like if we're at the front of the property in the house that we're sitting at right now, the front road is just kind of right out in front of us. At night, it'll sound like the coyotes are right outside of your, but pretty much like the Pyrenees and the coyotes almost have this agreement, like don't cross this line. I mean, and I'm positive if it wasn't for the Pyrenees, we would have had major losses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's all instinctual, he knows like, hey, this is my territory, don't cross it. And that's like, so
Yeah.
cool.
I looked out my front door one morning on the farm in Pennsylvania, and our Great Pyrenees was playing across that line with a fox, tails
Wow.
wagging, hopping back and forth, both of them just like really happy and exuberant, playing with each other, but neither would cross that line. That was a lot of fun to watch. You're respecting nature, and instead of calling nature God, you're understanding that nature is from God.
Yep.
All good gifts come from above, and certainly that includes our health and our food. And you guys are onto it, and I'm really excited to see where you guys go. I hope I see you at Polyface.
Definitely. Yep.
Yeah, you'll have to be in touch with me because I'll work something out for you. But I just want to honor and respect God and all that He's done and given to us,
Yep.
and use that. I want to teach others just like you guys. I'm always excited to meet more Christian, like minded people And I'm just excited for where you guys are going and how you'll be able to help people. And at some point in time, hopefully bring wives and children onto the farm, be it there or somewhere else. But it's really cool. Do you guys have any closing thoughts? Anything
Well,
you'd like to share?
thanks to the Fit Farmer, Mike, for introducing us.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
About, Christian guy, awesome. Him and his wife, they're awesome people. Yes,
They are.
Yeah, and definitely we're right on the same page. It feels super blessed to have met you. And yeah, like, always goes back to community. And I think that building tribes and just getting a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger each time in each event, and all those things.
Yeah.
About. But yeah, we're definitely looking forward to that 3-day event at Polyface that you told us about. And plan on it being the first of many events that we get to bump into you.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly going to invite you to my next one also, which will probably be West Virginia. But how do people contact you or find you?
So we're primarily, as far as online, we're most active on Instagram, which is just at raw milk and deadlifts, all one word. And then also rawmilkanddeadlifts.com if you want to see some of our products or merchandise, or get a hold of us via email. That is on deadlifts.com.
Very good. Thank you. It's been wonderful. And everybody else, I'm going to remind you about our Polyface Farm event, Nose to Tail Nutrition, June 11th and 12th. On the 12th, Sunday, we're going to have a worship service with preacher Joel and the worship team from my church, which includes me, and hopefully I won't be hoarse by then. Need to get some sleep and get over a cold. But we are going to have a fellowship meal, Lord's Supper even, and then we're going to carry on both Saturday and Sunday with lots of speakers, including Sally Fallon Morell, Mike Dixon, the Fit Farmer, Chef James Berry, myself, and maybe squeezing one other person in there. But it'll be a really cool event, and I'm looking forward to it. Our link should be live this week, so everyone can look for that. And you guys, I look forward to seeing you then the next time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
it's been great. Have a good day, everyone.
Today's episode of the God's Good Table podcast is brought to you by Simply Ghee. Simply Ghee is my go-to fat in my kitchen. I use it every single day for everything from frying eggs and sauteing vegetables to making cakes and cookies and things like that. It comes in the original formula and the A2A2 variety. Simply Ghee provides the delicious, intense butter flavor that we all love, but without any of the tummy-bothering lactose that is in just butter. It is made from the grass-fed butter of a herd of cattle in the pristine Pennsylvania Dutch country. So you know that it is safe, delicious, and full of good nutrition. Simply Ghee also now has a variety of spice mixes that you can mix into your ghee. This happens to be my favorite. It's the black garlic. I used this just yesterday on my cheeseburger and steamed vegetables. It's really, really good, and you can mix it in whatever concentration you desire, but about a teaspoon per cup is usually enough. It also comes in sriracha, heirloom salt and pepper, turmeric and black pepper, and maple cinnamon varieties. So with the ghee and the spices, you can mix it up and create flavor sensations in your kitchen for your family to enjoy. And while we're at it, we can kick it up another notch with Eat Pluck. Pluck seasoning is an organ-based seasoning from grass-fed, clean New Zealand cattle. It's delicious, it's nutritious, and it removes that yuck factor when you're trying to introduce organ meats to your family with all of the benefits that they provide. So I encourage you to give Simply Ghee a try and their new spice mixes, and Pluck as well. And if you use the promo code HEALTH, you'll receive 10% off your order at the Simply Ghee website. Thanks, relax, and enjoy the podcast.